our next panel, we're going to have a look at kind of the birth of Boba Fett. Not in the Mandalorian sense, but when Boba Fett first came to the screen. And we've got on stage here two of the people who, besides those who probably worked at Lucasfilm or were working directly on movies or were named George Lucas. These two guys were probably the part of the earliest two to have a look at Boba Fett and then help basically bring him to the public. Boba Fett's a really interesting character because George Lucas had already promised, I guess by late 1977, he'd already made a promise to ABC that there would be a Christmas special involving this really cool character, Boba Fett. Shortly thereafter, probably Kenner, he had made, told them that this was going to happen, and Kenner was going to release the figure years before the movie actually came out. It really goes to show George Lucas's marketing genius that, to tease that sort of thing out in between the movies when things were getting quieter, and it's something that you wouldn't see nowadays, really, that they would release this really cool figure with like no movie or anything to go along with him. So on stage with me, I have Jim Swearingen, who you will recognize from the previous panel, who was conceptual designer at Kenner and worked on the first Boba Fett figures. And then we have John Celestri from Nelvana, which was right here in Toronto. And he worked on the Christmas special and was actually the one to develop the Boba Fett character for the Christmas special, which was Boba's first public appearance. So welcome, guys. Thank you very much for coming.
Okay.
One of the things we were chatting about both last night and this morning was debating about who found out about Boba Fett first. So let's start with you, John. When did you first get wind of this project and of Boba Fett?
Okay. What I found out first is that we were in the middle of, we were wrapping up The Devil and Daniel Mouse at Nelvana. And so that was the holiday special, it was the second holiday special. And I found out that Clive and Frank Nissen were working on the storyboards of the script, in December of 1977. And so, but they were going back and forth with to Lucas and what have you with finalization of the script and the storyboards. And so when we finished The Devil and Daniel Mouse, which would have been about in March or April of 1978, we were told, okay, our next project is to do this thing. And we thought, okay, this is cool, because Lucas was very secretive about what they were going to do next, because you had the 77, the summer of 77 is Star Wars, and so now we're working on who's the villain, because we figured that Darth Vader had been tossed out and gone, and so who is the new one? We didn't think about it just becoming back. There was no idea of a trilogy yet. There was just Star Wars.
Yeah,
right.
You only had the first movie to go by.
That's all we had.
Yeah.
So when we got the assignment, I said, okay, well, this is cool. I get to do this new villain, and so my understanding is I get model sheets that had already been okayed about April of 1978.
What exactly is a model sheet for those?
A model sheet is a rotation of a full front, a three-quarter, side, and rear of what the character would look like. Before, and you have to do a model sheet to be able to understand how to rotate the character. This is before computers. To do that, we didn't have a modeler doing that, yeah. So we're just doing it in flat. But it was a design. I'm jumping too far ahead.
No, that's fine. There's no straight lines here.
Okay. Well, the instruction for the design was to make it like Mobius in heavy metal, the artist Mobius's work in heavy metal. which is more of a thin line. It wasn't not Disney at all. It's very different. And so you can see in the entire palette of the colors and also the types of characters. It more like there is a lot of stippling, in edging and whatnot, and all that had to be animated, So therefore, there was a lot of that. So it was in April that we had the model sheets and we started working on it.
So those were probably Joe Johnston's sketches, I guess, from ILM, maybe, that were the model sheets?
No. They would all have been worked on by Frank Nissen.
Oh, within Nelvana.
Within Nelvana. So by the time we had the okay, we were working on production because it was a very fast turnaround. Mm-hmm. My memory of the animation, I'm talking about in between layouts and all that, was maybe at the max 8 weeks to do the 9 minutes. And then it was going into color, and then it was back. I don't know if Larry has any memory of that at all. I mean, but that's a different story.
We'll have those guys up. We'll have those guys up this afternoon.
What I had for breakfast.
Yeah. Anyway, that is so. Well, let's leave it on that and see what Jim has heard.
And Jim, you would. So I guess we talked about working on the first 12 and all that. When did Boba Fett hit your plate?
My memory is a little shaky. I know only one incident, because I know there's a drawing that is attributed to me that's based on, looks like it's just copied of Joe Johnston's sketches. Somewhere in that I had a portfolio of those drawings, so that might have been where that drawing came from. Mm-hmm. But the first time that I met Boba Fett was somewhere. I think when we were talking, it came after them because our sales force had been pushing for something new to talk about, not just because we knew that we didn't have another movie coming for 3. We knew there was something coming, but we didn't know it's going to be 3 years later. So the salespeople really wanted something new. So there were discussions about, we need a new character. George was very secretive. I don't think he trusted the people in Cincinnati, especially the sales force, with new information. Mm-hmm. So he held it off as long as he could, I think. But
you guys in conceptual design, I think I've heard you say that was a pretty tight-lipped group.
Yes, we were a closed group. The sales force and stuff, they weren't allowed to come in prelim. We were supposed to be. You were supposed to be invited, but which was good for us and good for things like George Lucas and his secrecy. But he's promised new figures. So when you come back to my table, you can probably see this. But this was the first physical meeting that I had with Boba Fett. They had an actor come out dressed in the costume. Do you have the picture?
So we got it up on the big screen there too with George and Dave Okada there.
I didn't have the presence of mind to have a picture of me taken with Boba Fett, which would be better now because I'd be able to sign it on the. But I took this picture, and George trusted us in prelim enough to let me have a camera with me. So
I'd never even thought of that.
Yeah. He came out and turned around, and I took photographs of him, and then. My charge when it came back was to make it into a toy. So this is the first kit bashed one. Mm-hmm. And this time I didn't have to go back to Fisher Price. I just started using our own parts. So,
and I think
the most outstanding thing is you can tell that it has C-3PO's torso is underneath all that.
And I think the legs of a Death Squad commander and
Chris knows all the.
There we go. Arms of a stormtrooper.
Yeah. And then but it has the same quality as my other sculptures with my X-Acto knife and body putty. So it has that really fine sculpting to it. But this is the first encounter, and this is to be. I think I met George. I know I went to a dinner with George Lucas in Cincinnati when he came to town and saw the place. And so I'd met him before, but this is, really close up. I met his dog and all that stuff. So this is a pretty great meeting. And they just brought him out and turned him around.
So was that specifically for Kenner, or that was more of a costume test, I guess?
Yeah, this, as I understand, never made it to the screen. They actually did other changes to it. But this is for us to, it had been white up to this point, to this point. He'd been shown to people as white.
Yeah,
I think it was in a parade. I'm not sure whether it was before or after this, but this is the one I saw. And this is what became the toy.
And did you have any background on who this guy was, or besides he's a bad guy and he's got a helmet on?
I didn't even think we knew what his story was.
Really? I mean, so just a name and
we kind of knew he was a bad guy because he's wearing a helmet and stuff. That's kind of the signature of all the bad guys. But or a lot of the bad guys. Some of them, there's one that doesn't have a helmet on, but she's a bad guy.
And John,
guy in the, not a guy, but that kind of thing. But so this is my Boba Fett.
All right. And John, I guess you guys would have had to have gotten a little bit more direction about who this guy was in order to create.
No.
So how much influence did George Lucas have on the story for the animated short?
He wrote the script.
Okay.
Or at least he edited the script, but my understanding, he wrote the script at this point. And because you could tell that it had certain elements in it that had to stay only in his mind because he hadn't done, The Empire Strikes Back. So there's only references that he might have. As I said, our first reaction, we had the schematics of the costume, but the only reference we had was the script, the instructions to make the design Mobius, and the white stormtrooper uniform basis that had the helmet. Even the cape was white. Everything was white and that makes sense because we hadn't done the colors yet. And so therefore, if it was going to be in connection with the colors, we had to come up with colors. Now maybe that is just something that he decided, he saw that and he, might have given you instructions, what you want or what have you, or we're on the same, plane in thought of, because remember, what he liked about the Nelvana animation is that we weren't Hollywood. And
it was Cosmic Christmas.
It was a Cosmic Christmas that he saw.
Was one of the shorts you had made that
we had done the half-hour special, the Hollywood, and that's what he saw, and that was his reference, and so therefore it was that sense of not it wasn't California in tone, and
it was different.
It was different because we were doing Aliens. I mean, who was doing Aliens in 1977? Nobody.
Yeah. And so when you first colored Boba Fett, had you seen the color suit at that point? Or you had only seen kind of like the white suit?
As far as I know, is that we had color tests. Now, the referencing is because it has to have been, in some way, shape, or form through, because everything had to be okayed by Lucas, so we were already into production, and you have to have, because we had overlapping, a phase. If animation traditionally is, you have your model sheets, in your storyboards and your model sheets, and then you go into once you have the model sheets okayed, then you start coloring it. But there's always the way to get it through to final. In the short period of time that we had, you had to overlap each stage. So you're storyboarding and you completed that, but then you go into layout, and then it starts going into animation, but then you start going into assistant work and in-betweening, but then also you have to have it all finished and okayed, by the directors, and then go into color. And that takes, so you might have a month into production, you're already, you've got something going on in every stage of it because it has to be shot.
Yeah.
And so therefore, if you get it in April and you have to give it to them in August.
And you had a very hard deadline, right?
Yeah, it's a very hard deadline because it was Christmas.
Yeah.
So therefore, there was no going. I never saw a pencil test. I didn't see Boba Fett until the holiday special screened.
Really? Yeah.
I have a quick question because we talked about when we were doing Star Wars toys and stuff, we didn't have cell phones or FedEx or any of that stuff. When you're talking about coloring, you're not doing it you're not doing it digitally.
No. There was no digital coloring.
When
at
you
that
want
point.
it, if you say we need to change the color, it's not like one coloring. You
not
have
a click.
No, it's not a click at all.
Yeah.
It is, in fact, if you look at the coloring, one of the things that had to have been that the tonalities had to work well so that the characters would show up on the backgrounds, and you always had to deal with that. And subliminally, what people forget is the tonality of the color affects how it shows up in grayscale. And so therefore, in 1977, a good chunk of TVs were still black and white.
Yeah.
And so therefore, there's a tonality that had to come as part of the design thing. You couldn't have black on black and then we would see, or it could be red on black, but you just can't see that. It would not show up, especially you're talking about, tube, the back, we're not talking digital. We're talking, TV tubes,
Yeah, old school technology.
Old school.
Yeah. All right. So let's go back to the Jim with the kit bashing. When you put together that figure, so was that presented to George Lucas, or what was the approval process for?
Basically the same way. I mocked. They knew what this figure looked like, and that this one didn't so much get approved because it's not obviously not. We're not going to use that sculpture. Sculpture. So this probably went through stages much easier. We were just showing here's something that we can use for photography and for presentations.
Yeah.
And we'll do the real sculpture. We'll turn it over to the professionals in sculpting. So those would have gone through approvals. That would have gone back and forth just like all the other figures. But mine was basically a placeholder.
Yes.
So it
and then that was actually used in a lot of the photography, both in like the catalogs, the mini catalogs and stuff like that, and the insert for the vinyl case.
Yeah.
Back to that meeting with George Lucas, I just remembered you had mentioned that, and we know you're a bit of a fanboy as well of Star Wars. And I guess you'd met Lucas before at this point.
Yes,
you said, right?
we'd had dinner together.
But to go hang out with Lucas and Fett, that must have been pretty crazy.
People have heard this before. This is the trip I had the most regret about, because after having lunch with his dog, Indiana, and kind of sitting around they had a nice living room area. This is in their offices before the ranch, and Dave Okada and Gary Kurtz went off to talk about something else. I don't know what they're probably secrets that I wasn't allowed to hear. But I had an hour alone with George Lucas in his office. Got to sit, across the desk from the master, the guy I've been trying to please for a couple of years. And we talked about everything, a little bit of Star Wars, but he had... But I'm sitting, we're just talking. He had a comic book store in New York that he was partnering with a friend from college, and he had a Frank that had a painting that I had a poster of, and he had a Buck Rogers tin ray gun on. So we were just kind of like two guys talking about kind of, he's a little older than I am, but not much. Mm-hmm. We're just chatting, it's like, and an hour goes by and Dave Okada finally shows up. And in that meeting, the biggest regret was I never said, George, you need a toy designer working here with your guys. And it really was. It's like, I just didn't have the presence of mind at that point, or maybe the guts to say, George, you need to hire me out here, because it would have made things much better. But I didn't have the presence of mind. But that be that close to George Lucas after working on his movie for a while was just, now I just think about how lucky I was, because nobody, just like everything else, you as time goes by, things happen and they kind of you escape your grasp, and all you have is that memory. But I've enjoyed every Star Wars thing, TV, movies. They all have everybody. I hate this, or I don't like that one, or I'm like, I love it. I like it all. I love some more than some others, but it's just I enjoy every time there's something going on. And I went back. Just the other day I went back and watched the making of the first movie and on a video, and it was like, oh yeah, I remember all that stuff, and it came that close to people. So it's really great fun, and Boba Fett's just was the icing on the cake, because I didn't really work on production stuff after that, and then shortly after, I moved to the 17th floor and went into marketing department. So, and then I miss all that creative stuff. I didn't get to do kit bashing anymore.
Well, I think we all understand and kind of live vicariously through you as fans, that all those amazing experiences. Was like the animated short, were the timelines tight on making the Fett figure? Like tighter than normal, or was it just like, we'll get this out as soon as we can?
Well, there was always a push, because we never they were working on animation before we saw the figure, and it always takes us longer than, their schedules are pretty long, but 52 weeks was still pretty much it. And as soon as we started it, we weren't going to have product until later. That's why this Kit Bash one ended up on packaging and stuff. If we had had more time, they would have used a real sculpture or a real hard copy and not mine. So it was we never had enough time on Star Wars early on, because it was always push.
Yeah, sounds like for everybody who touched Star Wars, that's the way it was. Yeah. So, John, back to you. Just to understand, what would normal timelines be to create a 9-minute short that wasn't rushed the way this was?
Well, it really depends on what, we weren't doing Hanna-Barbera, 3 minutes a week kind of thing. That was a lot of, well, it really depends. We were doing it, probably we were doing maybe about trying to do 30 feet a week, 20 to 30 feet a week per person, which was, would be about 15 to 20 seconds.
Wow.
To cut that, because there really wasn't that many animators working on it. It was a handful of us. Yeah. And so, even if they're, cranking out everybody, and everybody didn't do it, the 20, 15 to 20 seconds a week of this, because you're still drawing different humanoid characters. There's a lot that goes into the pencil mileage of that, and such. So I think maybe in terms of the animators, there might have been like 6 animators, and maybe there were 6 assistants, but you're rushing and you're trying to balance things out. Yeah. So, but anyway, if you were doing Disney, okay, you're doing at the most 3 seconds a week per animator.
Wow.
You know, as a thing. Okay, when I was at Don Bluth's working on Dragon's Lair and Space Ace, we did maybe about, anywhere about 10 feet a week, which was like 6 seconds a week. When we were doing Rock and Rule,
it's amazing.
We were cranking maybe 4 seconds a week. So it gives you a thing. So we were really rushing through this as well as we could.
Yeah.
But without rushing, because you had to draw it. I mean,
you had to do the
work.
Yeah. There's no shortcuts.
No.
And were you guys sworn to secrecy as well? Was there?
Well, yeah. Here's the thing about that is they wrapped up everything. They took everything as soon as production was over. Everything was packaged and sent off to Lucas.
Really?
Yeah. And so my roughs are not production roughs. They were the initial planning stages. And I just kept them because normally they would be tossed in the trash.
Okay.
So anything that I got is from, because I just decided not to throw out the trash.
And we're glad you did.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about Boba Fett's weapon a bit. You had mentioned that there's one scene when Boba first appears that kind of sets his character or the tone for his character, where he smacks the dragon beast that he's riding. How did the weapon play into that?
Well, the only thing that we had, the idea is that there was a weapon. Okay, he used I think in the script it just calls for he raises he aims it at another beast. And it's it's a sonic weapon. I call it a tuning fork. Yeah, because there was no name for it, and it just vibrated, and then just shot something out, and then just so. But there really wasn't very much description as to what to do with the weapon. So I used the weapon kind of as a prop, which is something we could discuss about how to make the character do something, and you use the props that you have. Yeah. In your animation. Mm-hmm.
And well, because. Like how do you bring a character to life who has no facial expression?
Right. Yeah. And basically, I used the visor as an eyebrow, so that when because of the circular element of the helmet, when it's a straight on shot, and that's boring. So what you do is you tilt the head up or down, and so you have a furrow for brow and tilt it to the side, up, around, and so on and so forth to help put the body language into it. A lot of the shoulder, you'll see in some of the poses and whatnot, I've got him held, holding on to it, basically like a Bedouin. Yeah. And his weapon is very Bedouinish, in how he's, and also he's leaning forward and talking, and I had him toss the weapon around, and that goes back to my trick drill days in high school, because I was in the military high school, and we threw M1s and blades, across one of each other. So it was just a thing of tossing it around back and forth, and so I decided, okay, let me do that, and I'll use it to whack to settle down, because in the script had a different. He just said, the direction was, Boba punches slaps the beast on the nose. Well, the beast is, the neck is like 10, 15 feet high up. There's no way he's going to do that. So the only way to settle down is to whack him, like you would with he just slugged. I just said, let me just slug it with the beast. It's a beast. Yeah. So that's how we used the weapon that way.
Yeah. And so then the special aired on November 17th, 1978. It was ABC in the States. Do you know it was broadcast here in Canada as well at the same time?
I think it was CBC.
Yeah. It was CBS in the States?
Was it CBS? Okay.
And then CBC here in Canada carried it as well?
Or was it just purely, well, because it wasn't a Canadian production, you see, because it was, it was the animation, but it was, okay, so it was CBS that we saw on Buffalo Station. Yeah. That's
and did you guys like sit down and watch the special when it aired?
Well, it was the only time I saw it, I was watching it in my apartment.
Yeah.
Because the first time I got to see any of the animation.
And didn't have any idea of any of the other stuff around the animation in advance?
And that's not going to tell any tales out of school or anything like that. When I started the live action, I said, "Wait a minute, what is this? Why have we gotten B. Arthur and Art Carney? Why is Jefferson Starship? So what's going on here?" And
that was the typical reaction. Yes, yeah.
It was Harvey Korman or whatever his name. I was thinking, I was really worried that nobody was going to be still watching when the animation showed up. But I stood right through it. So, I'm glad I did, because it's the only time it was seen on TV.
Yeah, yeah. And I remember during like what we call the dark times of Star Wars collecting back in kind of the 90s before Hasbro reissued stuff, and we would pass around the Christmas special on VHS tapes that were probably 25 generations old and so wonky and stuff. But anytime someone gave it to you, they were pretty much just like, just fast forward to the cartoon.
Well, actually, you got to remember, there was no broadcasting of it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It never appeared again.
It never
on
appeared
TV
again
until now. The cartoon is on Disney Plus.
Right.
Only.
Okay. Well, there you go. As far as I knew, I just held on to my drawings because I liked it, and I had no idea that, of anyone really, even considering it until about 2005, when somebody, that I was working with said, "You did Boba Fett? Jeez, he is the greatest." I had no idea. I had no idea that anybody even remembered what
Really?
because considering the fact that it was a throwaway animation, and there was not much screen time in the live action Boba Fett.
Yeah.
And I counted up the minutes. I said, I got more screen time than the live action Boba Fett has. So I had no idea.
And it was really interesting at that time because the holiday special kind of kicked off the Boba Fett marketing engine and kind of implicitly the Empire Strikes Back marketing engine. And there were pictures before of the parade. There were store appearances with Boba Fett putting up wanted signs for Han Solo. Often alongside Darth Vader there. At Kenner, I guess when the holiday special came out, there's obviously the whole rocket firing Fett and the history and the lore behind that. I'm not sure if anyone remembers the exact date that the Fetts started being released, but I know the Battlestar Galactica, the incident with the child who died, that was in Christmas of 1978, I believe, right?
Yeah,
right after that. And so Kenner had been pretty deep at that point into the prototypes with the rocket firing Fett. Do you remember when word came down at Kenner about?
I don't. I was out of that. I can tell you the Christmas special. We saw it about a week early, maybe two.
Oh, really?
With the sales force. They brought everybody in to Cincinnati to watch it.
And what were your impressions? About the same?
I was really happy that no one from the Lucasfilm group was in the room. The sales force was not as patient as fans were. But it was, but I don't know that was all in production. So when they put the kibosh on the rocket fire mechanism, so.
Okay. Yeah. So and then, but then months later, the regular Fett figure that we all know and love came out. I did see a stat online. I'm not sure how real it is because you never know, but that Fett was the 5th highest sales Kenner figure from the Star Wars line, which would be pretty amazing considering he came out a little later than some of the earlier ones. But and then after you worked on the holiday special, you were still at Nelvana for how many years after that?
I was there until early '83. Mm-hmm. So I can tell you, we carried on doing the holiday specials. Like what we did was a series of, we did for Christmas, for Cosmic Christmas, and Daniel Mouse was for Halloween, and then we did the Romeo and Juliet for Valentine's Day, and then there was the Thanksgiving thing for Please Don't Eat the Planet, and did that, and then Easter Fever. And then Take Me Up to the Ball Team, and then Rock and Rule.
Cool. And was there kind of a sense of pride of being this small Canadian company that was working on this
it
huge
was a cool
Star Wars thing?
Yeah, well, everybody was wondering what was going on with Nelvana. I mean, what's in Toronto? I mean, that was because I had left New York and California, and came up here. And they said, what's going on? Well, little by little, it kept on. It was the rock and roll, studio. It was a very different studio from everybody else because of the age group and the culture. Mm-hmm. Very different.
Yeah, and very successful too. I mean, I think as a kid growing up of the '80s in Canada, you recognize that Nelvana logo immediately.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, thank you very much. Nice. That's a great look at the beginnings of Boba Fett. Is there any questions in the room? Go ahead, right there. Yeah, that's it.
I've got 2 questions. One for Jim, one for John.
All right.
Jim, I've seen official costume diagrams. This might be a Lucasfilm question, but I've seen costume diagrams for Boba Fett that are official that say that the thing on his back is in fact a grappling hook launcher. It's like a diamond tip, shoots up, the spikes would come out, and he could grapple up. You obviously did the prototype. Mm-hmm. It was your understanding that it was a rocket with a warhead? Or what was your understanding?
So the question is about official Lucasfilm costume diagrams that describe the rocket as being more of like a tripod thing to climb things. It was definitely a rocket from the start, kind of a Kenner, but
well, the model we saw, the one that I photographed, doesn't have any grappling hooks. In the 12-inch figure, they added fins to it, to the end of it. I don't remember them actually telling us anything about him other than, here he is, and turning him around. So so it's possible they did. Maybe in production they heard about it, and that's why the 12-inch figure, they added the fins. So I don't know.
Okay, but you're just trying to add play value kind of to the figure.
Yeah, well, it has. I mean, it looks like a missile, and we assumed it was a missile. But
the white outfits, June '78, it's got a missile. They talk about it. It's a launch rocket.
Yeah.
You have to see it in that picture too.
Yeah, the missiles.
Okay,
there.
That one's has more fins.
Because
looks...
Joe Johnson's picture where the figure is bent over, it's shooting the rocket out of it.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, well, I have a question for John.
Yeah.
It's, what's up with Han Solo's face?
Oh, that was Robin Budd. That was Robin Budd animating Han Solo, and it was just a little bit of squash and stretch. That was his style. He went out. He did mock in Rock and Rule, but that was just what he was doing. So
it's interesting how it takes such a team to work on something like this that it's everybody's styles come to it, I guess.
And that was another thing about, and we could talk about this, in the afternoons thing of the Nelvana, that everybody had their own style. Robin was different from me I was different from Charlie Bonifacio or Frank Nissen or Greg Duffel or any of the others. We all had our own style of drawing.
But it's got to come together.
Together, yeah. But
yeah.
basically, everybody had their own style, and you could tell, you could pick it out.
Okay, if you knew, you could pick out who would work.
Oh yeah, but you can notice that you would feel it.
Yeah.
Was it the director that made sure all the styles matched?
We were cast. We were cast for what our strengths were.
Okay. Yeah, so we knew the guys.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'll go right here first.
Just trying to get the exact chain of Boba Fett's creation right in my head. So Lucas comes up with the idea, describes it to Joe Johnson, who does the very.
Ralph McQuarrie had done concept stuff first. Yeah, and I think then Joe Johnson is taking it more to move it to the next step of creating an actual costume for it. I mean, I think with everything Star Wars around, what was George Lucas thinking? And it's like George Lucas is the only one who knows this, but there's always like a million rumors around things. What I've read is that before he decided to cut it short and be a trilogy of just 3 movies, that Boba Fett was going to be a far larger character, and that in kind of the second and third movie, almost the main villain, and then when he got kind of sick of Star Wars and wanted to cut it down and just do the 3 movies, that a lot of it was cut down, and he was going through that as he was writing Empire. So that's why Boba Fett appears so little in Empire. In the original writing that George was doing, there was far more Boba Fett, and then they just kept cutting it back because they didn't need to build towards the next movie. And the way with Boba Fett dies being just like, okay, we got to get rid of him at this point in the movie. So
Very, very first conceptual drawings of Boba Fett were McQuarrie.
I would assume so. Chris, you may know better.
So McQuarrie started in December '77. They started designing a super trooper. They wanted George wanted to do a squadron of elite stormtroopers. That's why he's white. But then they decided, wow, this costume is too expensive to do it. And Joe Johnson took over the design, so there was more refined in Joe Johnson. So it started off as this was going to be the super commandos. They were going to have a squadron, but they were like, it's too expensive. McQuarrie kind of did that. McQuarrie started in Joe Johnson. Then so they from like December to like May. Where their sketches are getting more refined. McQuarrie came up with sort of like that T-shape, right? And Joe Johnson took it over. But it started off as super stormtroopers, the squadron. And then they were like, it's going to be too expensive. So then they made it into a bounty hunter. Right?
Cool.
That's the white.
Thanks, Chris. Hey, Narayan?
Yeah, first of all, I just want to thank the organizers and Mr. Celestri for just being here at this event, because it's truly an honor to hear development, the character that so many of us
Obsess over?
are obsessed about.
Yeah.
So, the question I had actually was about the Panda Dragon. I don't know if you were the designer of that or if somebody else was.
Of the dragon character? We call him the
dragon-
Panda Dragon just because that's the planet he was on.
Well, I think that's Robin. I think Robin Budd designed that because he did.
The inspiration was for.
I have. Robin is a very creative gentleman, and so I think he did a handful. He handled the beasts, But again, he's referencing probably a cartoony element. Remember, we have to draw it's not just doing one drawing. We have to do between 12 and 24 drawings a second for this stuff. And so therefore, that's why the simplicity of the Boba Fett animation design, you have to take that drawing and keep using all those lines from, over a period of time. So it had to be cut back down. That's where the simplicity of the design had to come in, because we could never do the schematics that you do for one thing. It would just take forever.
Yeah.
So that's the simple. But the design was Robin, and he could probably. If he was here, he would be able to answer that question better.
Good. And there we go.
For Jim, what happened to the cape on the Boba Fett figure?
Probably cost reduction.
Yeah.
everybody wants to know where I got it. I think I told that I think it was the cover of a notebook, a 3-ring binder. I just cut a hole in it and said, "I'll use that," because, and we didn't have. It was just I want a cape. I want to do the cape. So yeah, I cut it.
Why didn't make it into production?
It didn't, because it probably cost. It's just because we were already putting a mechanism in him that shot a rocket, and you add that to a basic figure,
and the most
just too much
complicated
money.
paint app too of any figure, really.
So it was all cost. It was, and it came off early on. Once I turned it over, somebody just pulled it off.
I picture you kind of like I don't know. It's like your desk must have been like the ultimate kids' playground of parts, and it's like you were playing like Lego with Star Wars characters and putting them together.
Yeah, because I could draw on a much bigger palette of figures, so it's cool.
Go ahead.
Did either of you ever hear the word Mandalorian, or did that come up in a much?
No.
So the question is, did they ever hear Mandalorian at this Boba Fett stage?
No, the Mandalorian is a totally different realm. We never there was no at that point. It was just the beginning. It was just Star Wars, and as I understood it, it was going to be Boba Fett was going to be the next big villain, and that was the way of introducing him. And it made sense that would be the case. But in regards to Mandalorian, I don't think Mandalorian came about until Disney decided to do it.
Well, there were some references and kind of non-movie stuff to him being a Mandalorian, but I think that was much later.
Yeah.
More as they tried to fill in his backstory and a little bit more on that.
Yeah.
Do we have any? Oh, Scott.
The multi-part question for you with regard to some of the coloring you mentioned before, John. Did Nelvana have a lot of leeway with like the colors it chose and the design in general?
Well,
very prescriptive from
So here, I'll just repeat the question for the recording. But the question is, how much leeway did Nelvana have when it came to the colors and things like that from Lucasfilm?
Well, as far as I understand it, is that the direction was make it look like a Mobius cartoon from Heavy Metal. So given that range, you're already given the palette. Sorry, that's the palette that you had. Okay, so you have that. We followed the script, and I'm sure he okayed all of my hitting the beast because he said, "Hey, they look good." There must have been because there were no retakes. I had no retakes, and I had no pencil tests. I had no pencil tests. All I know is that he saw whatever pencil test was sent, and so after it came through, the studio, through the line. So, and that's as far as I know. I mean, I think he wanted, as long as he saw that we were going along the same route that he was doing. I mean, I'm sure the initial, he okayed all of the model sheets. He okayed the pencil test, at least the beginning parts of it. And so as long as we followed along that, he left us alone, as far as I know.
Yeah. And the second question I had was with regard to any coordination Nelvana may have had with Kenner or vice versa. Did the script change at all, maybe to highlight any, like, say, functioning features of Boba Fett, like the rocket pad?
No.
And then, conversely, did Kenner have any guidance to reference what Nelvana had done to say, make it like this, or was it totally...
No, we were basing it on the figure we took pictures of. And we never saw the weapon that they started out in the animation, so none of that. And the weapons that came with the figure were decided probably, in production somewhere. They said, which gun are we going to use?
Yeah, they used the stormtrooper rifle. They're probably just like, we got lots of these around. And
well, it's easy, you have the tool. It shortens, if you don't have to tool something, then it's that much faster getting it to market. So, but the tuning fork we never saw. So, we saw the animation later, but it was like.
It was the prop. Animators would. We had some prop people who might have designed some props, but when I was drawing it, it's just okay. It's a ray gun. That's it. Or the. I think that Frank probably came up with the rifle, but I just did it because we didn't have props as much to work with. The model sheets, I don't remember, them having props other than it was in layout, we just did it. And so what happens is in when you're, let's put it this way, it's genius if it works. You're a jerk if it doesn't.
And it worked.
Yeah.
Is it cool to see that it was eventually brought to live action and that the weapon was actually eventually put into the? I don't know if you're aware that they did that, but.
Well, in terms of the weaponry, I saw it and I said, okay, we're canon. I mean, I remember when the holiday special was not considered canon, and I thought, well, how could it not be if it was part? It was the second just piece of entertainment out of there. How is it not canon? And it's only because of the holiday special, and I don't know. Some people don't like animation, Well,
I think too the attitude towards animation has changed so much over the last 15 to 20 years, and then the level of respect for animation has really grown. Yeah. Do you have any more questions? No. Okay, great. I'll wrap it up then. I do want to say like a personal thank you to Jim Swearingen too. Jim came to May the North #1 last year, our first one. Has been a really big supporter. We're really happy to have you back this year, and John, we're really proud to have you here. It's really cool, I think, for us Canadian collectors to. Feel like part of it was actually made here, and there's this really strong connection, which we'll dive into a little bit more with the Christmas special and Ewoks and droids happening right here in our hometown. So thank you very much, guys.
Okay, great.